welcome, everybody to Pookie in Paradise. My name is Jeff. My friends call me Pookie. We got a full house tonight. Normally our show's, kind of good. Most of the time average, but today we have slightly above average show. And has nothing to do with us. But with us, not always, but sometimes, is Greg Sterner. Welcome back, Greg. Second week in a row.
Thank you. I can't believe it. I've been brought back for an encore.
Right. Well, more on that later. There's a White Horse conspiracy brewing, and we have to talk about it. But we're going to wait till the end to talk about that. Why? Because we want you to listen to the whole show. So we're doing the old hook, leaving the hook. With us as always, and always on time recently, is Mounts. How you doing, Mounts?
Doing good. Feeling great being on time.
Yeah, I told you it would.
Yeah.
When we had that quarterly review, and I didn't give you your raise.
Right.
I told you why. We're very upset at first, but you come around.
It made sense. I needed the punishment plus the reminder of no raise. Really nailed home.
Good. I'm glad. There's a lot of potential in you, man. And I just want to get the most out of it.
Okay.
And it all starts with being on time.
Gotcha.
You're the only one that's received a White Horse punishment so far, so
it's a whole lot of rigmarole.
I just want to make sure it's the last punishment. Also back with us is the hand of the Pook, Leah Kasari. How are you, Leah?
I'm good. How are you, Jeff?
I'm good. Good. How's your mom doing?
Better.
Good.
Yeah.
The reason I ask is because the first thing that I want to mention today is my grandmother just went into an assisted living.
Oh dear. How did that go over? Was it her choice?
My parents are very excited.
Yeah.
It's a lot taking care of an elderly person, especially when like your parents are getting up there in age and they just want to enjoy the rest of their lives. You know what they have. Well, I mean, let's face it. They're on the tail end of their lives, even if they live to 100.
How old is your grandmother?
Oh God, like 87.
Okay. Wow.
So my parents are very. She did go in willingly. She's back and forth on. She's nervous, and I get that. I don't know. Like for me, I'm already excited about assisted living.
Right.
Dude, they feed you 3 times a day. You can have unlimited snacks. They clean your room.
Yeah.
They make your bed. They bring you your fucking medicine. What
They'll bathe
about
you.
that doesn't sound awesome? Yeah, when you can't do it anymore, they'll bathe you.
Because you're surrounded by old people, and it makes you like realize that you're old. I think that's
Not
what
me.
it is.
I would go right now.
Really?
Yep.
Well, I will tell you something interesting. My grandmother lived till she was 101. And the last, I think it was 3 years of her life, after my parents just couldn't take care of her anymore, she did live in assisted living. And I think that assisted living transition bought her those last 3 years of her life because she enjoyed the cafeteria gossip so much. She was back in a social scene. No, seriously, like back in a social scene for the first time in probably decades. And she loved every second about it. They would judge, like who had the more prestige by like whose relatives came most often and who had the most grandchildren. It was a social circle. It was really fascinating.
Yeah, and no, you're 100% right. Well, people react to it in 2 different ways. There's no like in between. Like,
Right.
some older people flourish in that situation,
Right.
and others just don't have a good attitude about it and are so fucking stubborn. They're like embarrassed that they can't take care of themselves anymore on their own, that they just go there and die. They just give up.
Right. My grandmother lived to be 105, and she stayed at home with my aunt until she died. But and my aunt's like 82 now, and she's super excited to be living on her own in Florida or Myrtle Beach. But
She's like going to spring break and shit.
no, like we had talked about moving in with her because she's 81. She moved to Myrtle Beach. She's supposed to move with my dad, but no, he passed away. And she's like, "Fuck it, I'm going." Lived, and she loves it. Like, made friends, got a job. But I'm
At 82, she got a job.
Well, she had a job at AC Moore, and now they're closing. So, but yeah, I'm pretty sure the only reason my grandmother survived was out of spite. Like the Pennsylvania stubborn Pennsylvania Dutch woman must have caught wind that my dad and aunt wanted to move out of her childhood home, and was like, "Nope, I'm gonna live." She was born the year the Titanic sank. My
Oh my
grandmother.
God.
Damn.
Oh my.
And
Wow.
the one story I like to tell is she was like, God, if I had known then what I know now, I would have never done what I did. And we're like, what are you talking about? They planted their Christmas trees outside of their house. They're taller than the house now. Like the tree, like these pine trees are massive.
At her age, she was concerned about homeowners insurance.
Right.
The fact that this tree might blow over in a storm.
But yeah. But anytime she would go to the hospital, she'd be like, get me out of this hotel. I hate it here.
Yeah.
She just wanted to get home and lay on her couch and listen to the Phillies at 10,000 decibels.
But you can do that in assisted living. That they're just going to bring you your food and shit. Like, look, my grandmother was severely depressed living with my parents, and it wasn't because of anything they were doing. She will not get up before 1 o'clock in the afternoon. My mom's already like out doing errands at that time. Mm-hmm. She's, and she doesn't wake up till 3 or 4 really. But she has to eat breakfast and lunch because she missed breakfast and she can't skip a meal. She doesn't grasp the concept that, look, it's 1 o'clock. You can just start your day with lunch and then eventually have dinner. No, she's got to eat breakfast because she believes in this proper regiment of breakfast, lunch, dinner, dessert. My mom didn't feel like having a conversation at 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. They're watching their shows. She's going to go to bed soon. And my grandmother's ready to like socialize. Mm-hmm. So she felt lonely. She felt isolated. And we thought, look, she goes to this assisted living. There's other people her age. Maybe she makes a friend. Maybe she can, because that's all she wants to do. She just wants to talk. She just wants to reminisce and talk. And nobody, she wants to talk about who's dying. She wants to talk about how everybody needs to lose weight. So while she's living with my parents the past 2 years, my mom could not get her out of bed before 1 o'clock in the afternoon. It drove my mom insane.
Was she always like that?
She's always late. The whole family. And my mom, in sleeps late. It sleeps in 2 compared to a lot of people. But like 10 o'clock. Right. I'm the same way. I could sleep all day and I could stay up all night. If I prefer that. But no matter how many hours of sleep I get, no matter what time I go to bed, waking up at 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning is so difficult. So it runs in the family. It does. We all get it. What drove my parents nuts is that she didn't accept the fact that not everybody's like that. And so they were driving each other nuts. It had to happen. But the point of bringing this up is now she's been there for like a week. This is the only reason my grandmother will get up is that she doesn't miss a meal. They don't serve you breakfast and lunch if you wake up at 1 o'clock. They serve you lunch. Yeah. So she's been up at 9 o'clock every fucking morning since she's been there, just so she doesn't miss having breakfast. Whether
really?
she's hungry or not. Yeah. It's insane.
That's hilarious.
That's her motivator to get up.
Yeah. Yeah, they're not going to play her game. She has to follow their rules, which I think is why some people are like my mom sleeps late too. There's no way that would work for her. I mean, she broke her leg, so she's kind of stuck in that situation, and it's, she's not enjoying it. Let's put it that way.
I don't blame her. No, your mom, if it ever comes to you having to put her in assisted living, she's not going willingly.
She's not. No,
she will kick, scream. She might even murder. She might even murder you.
Yeah, she would easily. She would easily murder us, or she would be like, "Just kill me. Like I'd rather be dead."
Right.
If
and then after she won the battle and she moved into your house, probably to live another 100 years, make your life miserable. She would demand a case of Coors Light for just considering putting her in a home.
Exactly. Right.
So it's also daylight savings, right? That's the one that we just went through. Daylight savings.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just started.
It really fucked with me this year. It normally doesn't bother me at all. Maybe it's because I usually go out and I get, drunk and
Hammered.
right, don't remember it really, or just don't care the next day. But it really fucked with me. And it started with I read that it fucks with animals, like it drives them nuts too. So I started with the dog. The dog never gets up at 6:00, and she was jumping out of bed at 6:00, ready to take a shit. Normally it's like 8 or 9:00.
It does it to my kids too. They've kind of grown out of it, but when they were babies, I don't know, Greg, does your baby have a weird reaction to daylight savings? Like waking up at odd hours or
Well, my wife had completely forgotten it was daylight savings, so he woke up an hour later than normal this morning, and she thought, "Oh man, how nice it is that Charlie slept in till 8:30." See, but I had known about it since last night because I had seen friends last night, and when midnight hit, I was like, "Oh shit, it's already like 1 a.m. now because daylight savings is gonna kick in 2 hours, and it's gonna be 3 a.m. at 2 a.m." So I was aware, but she thought she got a reprieve and a nice little break this morning, and in fact, she did not.
I remember one time I was trying to fool my mom into sleeping in past when Sunday school would be, so I wouldn't have to go to Sunday school. So I remember just sitting like in the living room, TV off, just counting down the minutes till I can go wake her up and be like, "Mom, it's too late. Sunday school's over." Right?
did it work?
So I do this and I'm counting down the minutes. Finally, it's like, it's way too late. If she takes me now, it's going to be almost over. It's not worth it. I burst into her room like, "Mom, it's 10:30. Sunday school is over. Screw you." And then she looks at her watch. She goes, "Oh yeah, it was daylight savings, so it's actually an hour earlier.
Oh,
So get ready." And then she took me to Sunday school, and I had been more pissed off in my entire life that I made that fucking rookie mistake. I was like
of
9
all
years
the
old.
days. Yeah, of all the days to pick.
So daylight savings has been fucking me since I've been 9 years old, and I'm tired of it. And it needs to stop. There is no point to this.
You should have moved to Arizona because they don't do it. I want to know how that one
Now,
state
is that in
is
it?
just
Now,
like,
Leah, remind us, is that in a different time zone or?
they are in a different time zone. Yes, they are.
Okay.
They are. But sometimes they're 2 hours behind us and sometimes they're 3 hours. They are.
Look, we already talked about this. We got to bring these listeners new content every week. Not the same old packaged shit that we already talked about.
How do we get it? How do you get out of it? Like, how does Pennsylvania go, "You know what? Fuck this. We're not doing it anymore." Like, can they just do that?
Yeah, they made the rule one day. They can just change the rule again if they want to.
Right.
There was a point to it at one point. Does anybody know what it was? It was something to do with the farmers getting up and it fucking bullshit.
Mm-hmm. It was farming. The fucking stupid shit. Something with cows. I don't have cows.
Just getting up at sunrise or so. I don't know. There's no point to it. It's outdated. It's arbitrary. It doesn't matter anymore. Stop it. No more daylight savings. I will vote for whichever candidate gets behind that movement. I will vote for. I am a one-issue voter this year, and
So
it's on daylight savings garbage.
If Trump changes his tune and says,
I'll vote for him right now.
yeah.
I'll mail in my ballot early, even if I'm not allowed.
I do not believe that.
I don't either.
Well, fuck you guys. Go ahead.
It's despite popular belief, daylight savings time had nothing to do with farming. Farmers didn't like daylight savings time.
Oh.
It was first introduced, and most don't like it to this day.
Well, I got the farmers on my side then.
Yeah.
This movement is already huge.
Apparently, George Hudson, an entomologist from New Zealand, came up with the modern concept of daylight savings time.
Fuck that guy.
He proposed a 2-hour shift so he'd have more after work hours of sunshine to go bug hunting in the summer.
Oh yeah.
Bug hunting? That's why we do this, for bug hunting.
If that's important, then why not just permanently be on the thing with the less or the more daylight at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
fuck that guy.
What was his name?
I was gonna say Ernie Hudson, but the actor, but it's George Hudson.
Where does this George Hudson reside?
Fuck
We'll
you,
He's-
kick his
Susie.
fucking ass.
He's got to be dead for like hundreds
Yeah,
of
he's
years.
he's dead now. 1895. He was in eight. That's
Well, where's he buried?
Yeah, let's go
Uh,
dig him up and kick him.
Who is survived by him? I'll go kick their fucking asses.
We'll just dig him up and kick him.
I'm gonna guess New
Does he
Zealand.
have a daughter or something? If he has a son, I don't want to fight him. But
Yeah,
if he has a daughter, I'll kick her ass.
He probably has a couple great grandkids he can
I'll
kick
kick
their
their
asses.
asses too. Are they little?
Yeah.
yeah.
Are they children still? Because then I'll kick their ass.
Yeah, he's definitely born. He's buried in London.
Oh well, I'm not going to go there.
Yeah.
Did any of his family immigrate over here?
Is there anyone specifically
Yeah,
in Orlando, Florida?
I want to name. Yeah, if he's not, if that person isn't living next door, I am not interested. Let's get to the point here.
All right. Relatives of George Hudson living in Orlando. I would literally shit my pants if it was like George Hudson's great granddaughter is
Right.
attending Full Sail University.
Going for like recording arts. So I kick her ass, and she's like, "I have no idea who the fuck that is," because clearly there's more
George Hudson's in one in the
Hudson
world.
bloodlines in the world.
Yeah.
She
Doesn't
might
matter.
deny it. She might deny it, but she's probably a bug hunting weirdo herself.
Yeah, right.
Exactly. If I catch her out there with a butterfly net, I know it's her.
There's
So
a Dr. George Hudson, a family medical doctor in Orlando.
yeah, right. I'm walking into that place tomorrow. I'm being like, "What the flying fuck?
Some poor dude has no idea what the
What the bug catching shit? Did you guys
bug fucking freak.
right?
Bug fucking.
Bug loving. Meanwhile, it's like a podometrist.
Yeah, yeah.
He's a fuck him.
The energy of the show takes a drastic turn when we don't do the opening first.
Yeah, don't give it away.
Oh, whoop. Edit that out.
Oh no,
Editing.
there's no editing at this company. So, do you guys want to know how stupid I am?
Yes.
Oh yeah, sure.
So, my class this month, we go to film school. If you don't know that already, my class this month is history of motion picture arts, right? Which is just a film history class essentially, and more, obviously a part of film history. Films been around, early 1900s. Actually, still photography even earlier than that. And so a lot of the films that we have to watch early on in this class are silent films, right? Greg and I talked about this the other night. We watched in class. We watched a Buster Keaton film called The General, and it was a true silent film in the heart of silent filmmaking, and it's one of the most famous silent films of all time from one of the top 3 known people in the world at that time as far as actors go, or even anybody really, because actors were known worldwide at that point. Very few of them, but they were. So we watch this movie, we talk about it, but then we also have to watch several movies on our own outside of class and write papers on them. So the professor says, this week you guys are going to be watching The Artist. This is the last silent film that won an Academy Award. Have you guys ever heard of the movie The Artist?
No.
I feel like I have, but I don't
Okay,
think it's
well,
the one you're talking
I'm
about.
going to stop you right there. You feel like you have heard of it. Guys, Sterner, have you heard of The Artist?
I have not.
Okay. So that's a very cryptic message. So I'm thinking, oh, well, if Buster Keaton's movie The General won an Academy, that was the first silent movie or whatever the first silent film was to win an Academy Award. This one, since the silent film era wasn't that long, I'm thinking, oh, this is probably like 5 or 6 years later. So I'm thinking it's like a 1927 to 30 type movie, right? So I'm watching it at home, and it's going along, and I'm like, I'm thinking to myself, like this is really good quality for a 1927 film. And even though it's in black and white and it looks very much like a silent film, I'm like, this is really clear. Like there's no grain, and then it goes on a little bit more, and I'm kind of dozing in and out of sleep because I fall asleep during movies, especially silent films, old ones that I'm not interested in. And then I wake up and I'm like, is that fucking John Goodman? And then I start to think to myself, I'm like, well, he's not that, he's old, but he's not that old. He's not. And I started trying to do the math in my head, like he's not 120 years old. He would have to look very, very much younger in order to be in this movie. And then, so it really bothers me, and I can't really focus on the actual movie and what's going on. And then I kind of doze off again, like my mind relaxes. Then I wake up and I'm like, is that Donald Sutherland? Like, no, it can't be, because it's this. If this was made in the 1920s, and he looks exactly the fucking same, he would be dead. He'd be 160 years old. So then I fall asleep the rest of the movie. So then the next day I'm like, well, I can't really write a paper on this because I fell asleep during most of it. Let me watch it again. So I watched it again. I'm like, that's fucking John Goodman. But I can't, it's a silent film. I can't hear him talk. So the voice, I can't match up the voice. Now I'm angry. Like, I'm pissed off about this. And then I realize, well, I can just fucking Google it.
Yeah.
So my right. Why didn't I do this yesterday? So I just was John Goodman in The Artist?
Yeah.
It was a fucking, it was a 2011 film.
Yeah, it was recent. That's why I was confused.
It won an Academy Award, not the Academy Award.
Right.
As in Best Picture.
Right.
Well, it's good you tried to reason it through on your own, though, before you Googled it, Jeff. You get props for that.
Well, you're being way too kind, because that's something that you should Google right away.
I was trying to be nice.
My God, I felt like such a fucking idiot. I was like, you know what? I don't belong in film school. All these fucking 20-year-olds were probably like, oh yeah, they knew, they got the joke the professor made. They figured it out right away. Not me. Or a good student would have maybe Googled the movie before they watched it to learn a little bit about it, right?
You would think.
I didn't.
Or where did you find the movie? Like, how did you watch it? Did you rent it? Did you get it on your TV? How did you get the movie?
Well, the part, believe it or not, part of the class is not leaving us to find this on our own.
Oh, okay. I just figured, I don't know.
Like, okay, yeah, so you have to not only watch this movie, but you have to figure out how to fucking find it. And if you don't do it, you fail. Fuck you.
Hey, you know what?
That would be a fun game.
In college, students pay a fucking shit ton for their books. You should have to pay it. If it's a $17 rental on YouTube for some obscure shit, you should have to pay that as part of your debt.
Exactly.
Well, okay, so it's part. I'm sure it's part of it in some way, shape, or form. But it's basically a license that the movie has, almost like a deal that Netflix would have. Only this is for educational purposes. So there's this file of all these old movies that we could watch. But in addition to that, the class asks us. Now, there's no grade on this. It's kind of like the honor system. But the class asks us to watch an additional 30 hours worth of movies a week while we're in this class.
That's crazy,
right?
How do you at that time? That's insane.
I mean, it's an intensive schedule. There's no. It's not. The class only lasts a month, right?
Oh, okay.
So it's over 4 weeks. So they give us all these movies, both recent movies, fairly recent movies, going back a couple decades, going all the way back to 1913. We have our choice of hundreds of titles, right? And the idea is to watch films that you've maybe haven't seen before and critique them, or and these are some of the most famous films of all time. You know, they have something to offer the future filmmakers of the world. So I have all these films to choose from, legendary films, you know, Citizen Kane, Casablanca, The Godfather's on there, you know, like all these films. You know, you know what film the first one I watched was?
What?
Fucking Jurassic Park.
No.
I've watched that movie like 700 times.
You can quote that movie.
I can quote the movie.
Yeah, and you watch that one.
Now I have to ask: Did you see it any differently? Did you see it any differently, Jeff? As now an official film student, were you looking for different things?
No, because I was looking for those things. Like I noticed those things when I was 12 years old, seeing it for the first time.
Have you ever watched a movie with him, Sterner?
I think we watched a couple shows together at your apartment while we were hungover, but I don't know if we ever watched an actual film.
Watching a movie with Jeff, especially a movie he's into, is like, it's like going to film school. Like, you need to watch. What's that movie?
Watch Braveheart with him.
Yeah. Or Signs. Those two
Oh,
movies.
Signs, yeah.
Yeah. He will break it down in a way that you will see things that you would have never noticed before. It's fascinating.
Jeff, you got to pencil me in for a film.
No, I don't do that anymore. I'm retired.
We'll just have to make our own together then.
We will, yeah.
Watch Braveheart with director's commentary on, and just imagine Jeff's voice.
Yeah.
Instead of Mel Gibson, it's
Yeah, well, that movie's on there too. I've also seen that movie 900 times, and that'll probably be the next movie I watch. So I'm just doing the same thing I've always done. I keep rewatching the same movies that I'm into.
Yeah.
I did the same thing as a kid. I watched Lady and the Tramp every single day, and that's not even an exaggeration. I know a lot of times I'm sarcastic. I'm just, you know, I'll say a number. Yeah. I watched it every single day for like 5 years. As an adult, as a young adult, I watched Homeward Bound at least 20 times within a month.
Dude, fuck that movie.
Yeah, I don't like that movie.
I cry every time.
How can you not like it? They all survived. They all got home.
I love it, but
it's the happiest of end. But yeah, when Shadow comes,
when they go to give up on Shadow.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm about to cry right now thinking about it.
That and Far From Home: The Adventures of Yellow Dog. Fuck that movie too.
I used to watch Old Yeller every single day.
You are a masochist. Why would you do that to yourself?
That's a good question. Greg and I have spent a lot of time writing this movie over the past month, and we've really gotten into who the characters are. I bet you could answer that question that Leah just asked as good as I could.
Well, in my mind, it would be, even though we lose him at the end every single time, every time you turn it back on, he's back. He comes back. So you know, it's the recycling. It's a different season, and Old Yeller's born again every single time.
I've never seen the end of it.
Yeah,
you're sorry,
like
buddy.
You're like
yeah. I was just gonna say that. Like Phoebe.
No, I knew how it ended, but
just didn't watch it.
I've never watched the end of it.
Is
that how you would have answered it, Jeff?
No, that's actually nowhere near.
That was way too.
Just saying, I struggle with some very deep ideas, you know, dark ideas.
Yeah.
Well, that's
part of the recovery is the punishment in a way, you know, trying to make sense of a kid having to kill his dog.
Mm-hmm.
That is a really a kid that maybe doesn't. He's the man of the house, but at the same time, he probably doesn't understand the disease of rabies, you know, fully enough to know why he has to kill his dog. He just knows he has to do it because he's the only one that can.
Right. It's dark and twisty.
I think about 10 years after that movie. Is that kid fucked up? Is he a serial killer? Like, right. You know, how has this affected him his entire life? Has he ever gotten another dog?
Well, and honestly, it's the rewatching and the going through that over and over again. I get
It's like
dark things.
torture. Yeah.
Yeah, you get looped in it, and it is part of the creative process though, because you're going to a dark place. You're really trying to understand it through repetition and really twisting it around in different ways. So I do get that.
Yeah. I used
I
to
don't
watch
do that with
Lassie
movies.
every day too. Like I suppose I was a lazy kid. I watched a lot of movies every day. I was the original kid just put in front of a TV.
You're like Bill Murray from what's that Christmas movie, Scrooged,
Yeah.
where he just sits in front of
Well,
a TV.
well, it's interesting too. Like my mom, like my dad left. It was just my mom. She had to work full time,
Right.
and everybody, the whole family, still lived in, um, still lived in New York. And even though I was in daycare early on, by today's standards, I was at home by myself after school at a very young age.
Hmm.
And what did I do? I watched movies. I didn't do homework.
Yeah. You were a latchkey
I was a
kid.
terrible student. But I watched movies. I watched a lot of TV when I was a kid. Yeah. It's interesting.
Yeah,
Isn't that
is
interesting that maybe I really was doing my homework?
Yeah, it sounds like
Oh.
a kid who was destined to go to a master's film program someday.
That is
And watch
interesting.
and I have access to a world of revolutionary films.
And you watched Jurassic Park.
And I watched Jurassic Park for the 856th time. Which it's on Netflix. I could watch it on Netflix, but I chose to watch it on this platform because they can't tell who's watching it or when they're watching it, but there's a count to see that people are watching it, and whether they're going to have to change it up to hold us accountable. So they're just happy as long as people are watching the movies.
You show up and they're like, seriously, Jurassic Park?
Yeah, there was one person in this class that watched Jurassic Park. Who was it? We actually put that one on by accident, and you watched it.
You'll all be kicked out.
Is Gone with the Wind on the list?
Yeah.
Is it? Are you going to watch it?
I've never watched that movie.
I know you haven't.
It's like 4 hours long.
I can't do it.
It's my favorite movie of all time. I can quote that movie. I have seen Gone with the Wind. That was my watch as a kid. Like I would sit there and watch it.
That's fucking weird.
I know it is.
4-hour fucking movie. Get the
Loved
fuck
Gone with the Wind.
Look,
That and Giant. Those two movies were my go-tos as kids.
Like My Giant?
No, Giant. The movie Giant with
James
Liz Taylor
Dean.
and James Dean.
That's probably on there too. I watched Jurassic Park instead.
Giant's great. You should watch it.
I forgot what I was going to say. Perfect time to. This has gone longer already. We have a super long interview. We know that because guess what? We already did it.
Wait, what?
Where was I?
It's look, the entertainment industry, a lot of illusion, and we have figured it out.
Kind of.
So we already we have a great interview with an interesting person. His name is Mark Hopkins. He's the head of Greater Philly Search and Rescue, and that's one of the reasons why Sterner wanted to be on with us, because Sterner has a much deeper relationship, a friendship. They talk often, so it'd be great the fact that we had somebody here that knows Mark and is able to kind of help us guide the interview is great.
Mm-hmm.
But the magic of this whole thing right now is that we already did the interview. And we already know what's going to happen, and you guys don't. So we're going to take a quick break, and you're going to hear us do this interview, but it already happened. But it's after the intro to the show. Welcome back, everybody, to Pookie in Paradise. We have a very interesting guest, maybe our most interesting guest in the year and a half or so that we've been doing this, Mr. Mark Hopkins. Mark, how are you today?
Good. A lot of pressure. Most interesting guests. You'll be lucky if I don't nod off during this because I've been wiped out. I just slept in 2 days. But our interview warm-up conversation has me interested. I'm fixated on the pictures. I'm waiting to see somebody make a false move so I can get an indication to validate what we were saying earlier and not go situationally blind and turn away just in time, just after I approve.
Well, look, in true fashion, you fit right in. We're always late. whatever time it is. You actually have a reason for being late. We never do.
Never.
But just to let everybody know what you do, you're head of Philly Search and Rescue, and we had this interview scheduled for tonight, but you got called in, and that's a really interesting reason to be late for an interview. So we don't mind, and that's probably the only acceptable reason to be late for an interview. We don't have any excuse whatsoever.
Trying to do a podcast or any kind of broadcast like this, I envy the people that can do things on a schedule and have it running like trains or planes or whatever. Because on my show, it kind of if it were an airplane, it would taxi the runway an indefinite amount of times and eventually take off and then land when it runs out of fuel somewhere. Because that's the way my show goes.
Right.
So I get the whole scheduling thing, and I don't believe in on time. I believe in time. So,
I like that one.
Yeah.
That's a great way to think of it, because I'm the same way. I work much better under pressure anyway, and as long as I get it done in time, what does it matter? Nobody knows that I procrastinated or was late.
Right.
That being said, the past 2 episodes of this show have been not in time. They've been several days late.
But the audio sounds incredible.
Compared to some other things that we've done, it's not bad. It's not bad. We're proud of it. So we are dying to get to know who Mark Hopkins is, and you do have a really important job. But I think it's important to let people know. Well, first of all, how did we find you? I came across your name because of a season that we were working on for the Ever Evolving Truth, and I thought to myself, hey, if we ever wanted to do a search, this would be an interesting guy to talk to. And eventually we reached out to you. You formed a friendship with Greg, and he ended up doing your show. So that's kind of how we know each other. And but I think it's important to know that most people think that you are just a branch of law enforcement, and that's not the case, is it?
Oh, no, not at all. We're utilized by law enforcement. What we do a different thing. We're called in when they reach the end of a skill set, and we all have different skills. And when departments want to take it a step further, they call us when they need help with a missing person case, and that's what we do. And we've got many successful outcomes because of good relationships with law enforcement, realizing that it's just not something that they have the time to keep up a skill set on. And there's a point in investigation where time's running out and you can't rely on luck. So you want to call in somebody who does it all the time. Just like a roofer and an electrician. Who's smarter, a roofer or electrician? I don't know how you measure that. They do different things. One isn't better than the other one, and I know that I've probably pissed off roofers and electricians every year, all over the place. But I think they're equal things, and they just different skill sets. So we need to all learn to practice our skill sets, learn our things, be good at them, and be able to stay in our lanes and ask for help when needed. And we do this all so that people can get their loved ones home safely, and they can have closure when necessary.
Yeah, that's an interesting part of your job, because even if you have a successful outcome, it's not always pleasant. That has to be difficult to deal with. Or have you learned to kind of step back from that feeling over the years?
No, you don't step back from it, because when you stop getting disturbed by disturbing things, I think it's time to stop. And I still get bothered by stuff. It just doesn't roll off the same. It doesn't roll off. Children still bother me. Anybody, the closer you get to innocence, it just bothers me. It's not age. It's not anything. It's innocence. There are people that are 100% innocent, and there's people a little less, So it bothers me. But it bothers me more knowing that people don't have the closure that they deserve when a loved one is missing. So that pushes us on, and it is disturbing, because it's a solemn thing to be able to bear witness to this and help move things along the stages when you're doing a recovery or something like that, because you're finding a piece to a puzzle that helps close something down, and what happens is it closes down one thing. Every time we find something, people think you find answers and resolve things and solve cases. Now, you answer one question, and that question is, where is the person, dead or alive? That's all you answer. But you find a million other questions once you find them. It never just gets wrapped up. It just keeps going. It's like life. It goes on.
Mark, you mentioned something really interesting in our talk. You had mentioned that you have a weird connection sometimes with the families of the people that you do end up finding. And while it's almost like you will always hold a special place for those people, they'll never forget you. But at the same time, every time you think, I really ought to reach out to that person, or I really ought to, touch base again, you remember that this connection you have, that when they think of you, even though they'll never get you out of their mind, it also at the same time is forever tied to the worst day of their life. And that's got to be the most conflicting feeling when it pops into your head, oh, I ought to call so-and-so, that that's what you're tied to. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh, absolutely. Well, you said most of the good stuff, but I'll try and come up with something.
There's Sterner, typical Sterner, stealing the spotlight from everyone.
Sorry guys.
Fucking asshole.
Basically, that's absolutely right, because what happens is you form a bond with these people, and what you see is a lot of times you see a strength that you don't see in the average person going on their day-to-day life, and you see people with resolve that you don't normally see, and you meet people that you really like and you come to respect, and even the person I'm looking for, I meet people that I think, I really wish I'd met this person. I really wish I could meet this person. And they develop, because of the situation, an attachment, but it's not fair to them to continue anything beyond this, because that's just our job. And we will always remind them of that day. It always goes back to how we met. And we met because of this terrible, terrible thing. There are people that on the anniversaries contact me about getting together, coming to the house for dinner, or holidays or something like that. And it's just, it's nice, but you politely decline. And some of them, if I met under different circumstances, I'd probably hang out with them. I mean, I went to one person's house once, and they had a picture of some configuration of the team on their mantelpiece, and we had found a deceased relative of theirs, and that just kind of freaked me out. I mean,
yeah, that's a little weird.
I was flattered, but it was like, hey, I really appreciate that, but could you throw that out? I just get that out. But people, you can't judge people by your standards. That's a common mistake we make in this world. You've got to let them deal with their situation their way, as long as they're not hurting anybody, and respect it. That's the best you can do.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. That goes along with everything. I mean, whatever that picture was there, whatever reason was there, it was helping them cope, like you said, with the worst moment of their life.
It helped them more than it annoyed me, Yeah. So I got to suck it up and take it. I believe we have a hand from the lovely young woman there in the corner.
I do. Do you ever have relationships with people in positive outcomes? Like if you find someone that was lost, do you stay connected to them?
This is going to sound really weird, but when it's a positive outcome, lots of times people are more dismissive of the entire incident. There isn't the time to form that bond. There's two types of things. There's yay. There's three. Yay. Thank God it's over. Thank you. Shake, shake, hug, bye. And then there's, we got lucky. This is going to happen to pop again. You just ducked the bullet. You just delayed the inevitable. And then there's, I can't believe this. We're going to go through this again. And that's kind of with the live things. It's different because people get to do. It's kind of like the difference between you slipping and falling on the ice and slipping and catching yourself before you fall.
Yeah.
You kind of don't appreciate the people that go through that grist mill of all the emotional draining of having to deal with what could have happened to the loved one and everything. And when you walk with them down that horrible path and you get to the end of it, that's where that bond is formed.
That makes
Okay.
sense.
Yeah, that does make sense.
How does someone get into this business? How it's I don't think maybe I mean it's like a one-off from like law enforcement or military. Like I would imagine people with that type of background are good at this kind of stuff, but nobody really wakes up and says I want to be in search and rescue. As a kid I want to be a baseball player or a basketball player. Or firefighter even. But how did you have like a calling to do this at a particular age? Do you remember that day when you did have the calling?
Yeah, I was doing disaster services work for an organization. I had fallen asleep, and the fax machine went off, and out of the fax machine came a piece of paper that said something about search and rescue. It hit me in the head and woke me up, and I read it, and I said, that seems interesting, and I said, I'll try it out for 6 months. And then I sold my soul to Beelzebub, and here I be, 23 years later.
That's crazy. Yeah, the fact that a fax hit you in the head.
Are you an ex-officer, or is that your background at all?
No, I don't have a law enforcement background. It's all emergency services. One of the problems that I've seen is that you're talking about people that are good at it. And what you were saying was exactly wrong, Jeff, but it's what everybody thinks. One of the problems with law enforcement do it that while they had many great attributes to add to it, the fact is that a lot of times the people that are good at it are very rigid in their decision process, and you can't be that rigid. You've got to be able to bend for the reality of the situation. So that kind of excludes them sometimes, people that aren't rigid. The people that are really good at this, IT guys, engineering guys, accountants, and angry mothers.
Yeah,
Yeah, I can't.
I can imagine.
I would urge nobody to mess with a mama bear ever.
No. Many cases would be gone and left forgotten if not for the resolve of angry mothers.
Right.
They do more work than anybody else.
Do you find yourself depending on that people outside the organization to keep cases alive? Does that happen often? Or do you feel like you need that? Is that like a big thing in your business?
It's not as big as it should be. I think it should be bigger. We do rely on it to a degree. I really like it when somebody motivates me. I mean, I work with a police officer today who one I've known for a while, one I just met, but they gave me a little hope, and I can. The older you get, the less hope it takes to live off of. I can live off of a teaspoon of hope for a month, and they care about their job. They do their job well. They do everything that everybody portrays and thinks everybody in a vocation does. They do it for the right reasons. And in this age of social media and back padding and everybody having to get a participation trophy for everything, they do it without anybody knowing it, just because it's a job that needs to be done. And I respect the hell out of that. I always will. There's too many people out there that are celebrating their own mediocrity.
I wanna just go back for a second. You mentioned in the very beginning that you're able to do this in part because you have a great relationship with law enforcement. And that being said, do you ever find it difficult to work with them for the reasons that you explained? They're very rigid in their thinking. They don't bend a lot. Do you find that it makes your job a little bit harder at times?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Because what happens is law enforcement is still primarily a male-based occupation. And men can be stubborn. It's that same mindset of not pulling over to ask for directions. And it's difficult for anybody to ask for help. It's difficult for somebody who's trained to help to ask for help. It's some police officers look at it as like, I'm not going to ask for help. I don't need help. I'm trained to do it. I'll work through it. And some say, I know when I hit the end of my skill set, I'm gonna call in other resources, and it doesn't hurt them. Uh, and it just it depends on the mindset, and it's just individual with the officer. The average police officer out there wants to help. What we need is for people to realize that when they hit the end of their skill set and how to move a case forward, because cases get cold real fast, and in this busy world and this fast news cycle, you don't see a missing person case on the news more than once typically, unless it's a very attractive person, you know.
So you,
Because
so yeah, that has to be a real concern for you, is that these it has to get to you in a certain time in order for you to have the best chance of helping to close that case.
it does. It does, and it wears you down sometimes because clock ticks, you can't get it back, and it just sometimes in my bones I can feel where I'm past the point of no return on the case, and we're not going to have a positive outcome no matter what I do.
Do you get cases when they already know that they're deceased pretty much and you're just looking for the body?
Oh,
Do you,
absolutely, yeah, absolutely, it happens all the time. Recoveries, um, and you don't you work it as though they're not deceased, but there's when they are when everything leads up to it, and somebody's been talking about doing something themselves, and you find out that the day they went missing, they picked up a gun at the gun store. Their car is found at the park. Everything. You can pretend to be optimistic, but you know what the reality of it is. See, I'm a pragmatic, a realistic person, whatever you want to call it. I am not an optimistic person, and I will take this moment to lash out at optimistic people everywhere, because optimistic people look down on you if you don't share their beliefs, and they are arrogant in believing that their beliefs are the only way there is and they're right. As a pessimist or a realist, I believe in my beliefs, but when I am wrong, the world is better, and I'm always happily wrong at the cost of the world being better. Okay, I don't get hurt if the world's better. It's better. Optimist thinks that they've got the best vision of the world, and if you don't buy into it, then you're just a big duty head. And I'm just on a different page. So,
yeah.
and I know a lot of optimistic, good, nice feeling people, but I really enjoy the mix of people that I have on my team of grumpy curmudgeons that gets off their sofa and goes and helps strangers in the middle of the night, because there's a lot of nice people sitting at home pouring through silk sheets that don't do crap for anybody.
Yeah.
I can't say that on my show.
You think Russell would cut that out?
Oh, he'd edit me. He'd edit me to death.
There's a case in the media now, the Evelyn Boswell case, where they just found this baby's body, but they had already arrested someone. So is that the kind of thing that you do sometimes? Like, do you get those, like, you already know there's been a murder? How does something like that work?
Well, we get some criminal cases, but usually what happens is you get a note indicating someone wanted to do harm themselves. You have behavior changes. You have something that looks like a crime scene that's so bad that nobody survived it. It's difficult. It's difficult because in the way the world is right now, it's become harder, not easier, to fathom. What's always gotten people about missing person incidents is that if there's a fire, we're a little numb to it. They put the water on the fire god. That's what people think. If there's an EMS call, somebody stabs somebody because they said they look too fat in them jeans, whatever. If somebody shoots somebody, it happens. But when one of the herd just vanishes on their way back from Panera or Wawa or whatever you have near you, and they just vanish, that freaks you out a little bit, and it hits something primal with people. And you would think that with all the technology and cameras and all would change, it would be easier. It isn't, because it makes it weirder that somebody vanishes in this heavily monitored world. It's because the first thing we ask is, don't they have photographs? Don't they have cameras? Don't they have anything? And in 23 years of doing this, the amount of good video that I've had to find somebody, I could put in a teaspoon, because usually when I do get a camera that is working, it's that standard grainy video that's used to prosecute people all the time. I don't know why. In this, if I can get, a 4K picture of somebody winning a Hot Wings contest, why I'm still getting this grainy, ghosty, black and white thing of somebody committing some kind of crime or walking by a camera. The video that I see for most cases to this date, I really think are off of VHS tapes from the 70s, and I think it's the same tape that's just been cycled every 24 hours since 1978. The quality is horrible.
That's a really interesting point, because right now, I don't know if you know, I'm in film school, and the class that I'm at, doing right now is history of motion picture arts. It's basically a film history course, and we're in the beginning part of the class, so a lot of our subject matter is 1920s silent films. How is it that in the 1920s, with a camera that weighed 500 pounds, they got better film than you can get trying to solve a fucking crime?
I don't know. I think that as the technology becomes more pervasive and we just get more access to stuff, I think that our value of the quality of what we do with the technology goes down. I don't think we value pictures the same as we did when we had to get them developed off of 35 millimeter film. I think we could just take them at our disposal, so we take crappy pictures and think we caught the moment. If not, we'll catch it again. We don't cherish it anymore because it's all disposable.
That's very true, and that's why professional photographers are still relevant.
Absolutely. Professional everything is still relevant. Professional everything. It's amateur hour out there. Many of us amateurs, and I call myself an amateur with my amateur podcast, we don't have that base core skill set. We're not Edward R. Murrow, and we just
you may not be, but I am. Look, I'm having a conference on how to do the best podcast ever. I'll give you a free.
I'm watching Mount's shoulders to see if he's typing to Google what we're talking about.
It's funny that you bring that up, because Mounts is the resident Googler. He's a man of few words at times, but he's always Googling something and comes out with a gem every now and then.
I can spot his type. That's like Russell on my show. Russell communicates via a series of cuts and pastes, the screenshots via Google. He's like Stephen Hopkins, but he can use his hands.
Jesus Christ.
Instead
of actually talking to you, he just sends you an email with what he's thinking.
During the radio show, he just pastes stuff on my screen, and
right.
He just goes out, gets a bucket of Google, drinks it down, and just throws it up on my screen.
So you're listening to Mark Hopkins on Pookie in Paradise, head of Philly Search and Rescue. I want to know, Mark, what gets you out of bed in the morning? What drives you? What are you passionate about?
Hunger, mostly hunger and the smell. Mount nodded an acknowledgement. See, at least I got somebody on the side.
So food gets you out of bed. You're telling me you're like a fat guy in summer who hasn't eaten in a couple days.
I'm working on it. I mean, I'm not fully committed yet, but I'm working on it. No, I want to. I think that you're supposed to. I think that when you go, you're supposed to have made some kind of difference. I think that you're supposed to leave the vessel that is your body as worn out and as hollow a husk as possible for the good deeds that you do to help others. And I think that I just don't have the same drive as other people for things like money or notoriety or things like that. I would be really happy. You guys are seeing where my office is. I'm a private guy for the most part. Just put in a public situation. I mean, I'm really comfortable underground, and I mean that figuratively and literally. I think that I just want to. I know myself, and I know that I'm going to bitch, piss, and moan about the world. I just want to pay my dues and earn my right to bitch, piss, and moan around the world by saying I tried to do something to make a difference. And
as an aside there, Mark, I will say for anybody that has not been in Mark's office, it looks like who's that Marvel character with the sprayed on face, the conspiracy theorist? Mark's office looks like the Question. Mark's office looks like the Question's office. Like there's literally stuff taped over all over. If I didn't know that you weren't a conspiracy theorist, I might actually believe that you were a conspiracy theorist based on your office alone.
Well, two things, not to battle with you here, Greg, because you and I can go back and forth on philosophy and such.
That's right.
One, that was only a room. That wasn't my office. That was only one room. That was my mind palace. Okay, so and the second thing is that the Question is a DC Comics character, not a Marvel character.
Please,
that DC.
You fucking idiot.
That was uncalled for.
Strike two.
My research is not on par. They basically
you are making us look like fools, Gregory.
No, admit it. You guys were a little. Jeff, you've been scared of this guy since he took us to the bowels of the fucking insane asylum. And you said, Sterner, you're going to be on this whether you research it properly or not. You need to be there. I'm scared of this man.
Look, you are not lying. I was ready to shit my pants. If I was there by myself, I would have shit my pants.
Well, now I want to see it. Like, really want to see it badly.
It's out of. The first thing I said to Greg when we went there to meet Mark was, I want to shoot a movie here.
Really?
It's eerie, but it's so eerie, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah.
I dig it. Do you have is it for different investigations? Is that what you have on the wall?
Yeah, it's cases that bother me. It's
Okay.
cases that bother me that aren't closed out, aren't right or whatever, and I put my notes up, and I'm a very visual person, and I put things up on Post-its, and I see what doesn't line up. I'm big on visuals, big on timelines, and you can use time and physics and just rules and facts to get truths to just resolve situations, and you could just say it doesn't make sense, and know which way to go with something. And it really does work. It's a thing that they called back in the old days logic.
Right?
Mark, does it keep you up at night? Do you lose sleep over some of these cases?
I do not sleep at all, so I can't say that I actually lose sleep, because I'd have to get some to lose it. It's kind of like money. I didn't. I went out today. I was up all night last night. Well, first off, I was up because I was working, and then what happens is, when I know I'm going out to do recovery or something, you get a little amped up, and your mind goes. Greg knows I keep insane hours, and I do. Well, we've had late night talks, and he's hung tough. But
yeah, more they were like early morning talks that used to be late night talks.
Yeah, and I can't shut my mind down sometimes thinking about the cases and thinking about them, and it must be what it's like to have some kind of be somewhere on some spectrum of some sort. I think I could step outside of that mode. Fortunately, unlike people that have whatever the myriad of ailments are, but when I lock into that, I can fixate on it, and that's part of what makes me good. It's part of what makes me annoying. It's part of what makes me have 10 of the same exact pin of the search. And where's pin number 10? You've got 9 others. I had 10. I need 10 pens here, please. Where's the 10 pen? We've got a pen thief.
Well, you talked to me a little bit. Go ahead, Jeff.
I just want to go back briefly, and I'm paraphrasing what you said, but you talked about one of the things that drives you is that you want to leave your mark on the world. You want to earn the right to. You joked about bitching it, but you want to earn the right to say that I did something that mattered. Uh, do you feel like you've gotten there at this point? Like, do you feel like if you went right now, you achieved that vision?
Um, no, no, I don't think so. I think if you think you've done it, you probably haven't. I think other people need to make that decision. Uh, I don't think you can make that decision. I mean, spiritually, I think you can come to peace with the choices you've made, but I don't think that, I think it's better if somebody else makes that decision about your actions, and I think they come after you're gone. That's the reason we build statues after people die. I
Yeah.
think that's kind of how it should happen.
That's I was really interested to get your take on that question because Greg and I have had conversations about artists that part of the reason why they're successful is because they can't be satisfied. It's a blessing and it's a curse because it forces them to keep creating, but it's maddening because you can never be satisfied. You can never just step back and say, I did enough here. You're never 100% satisfied. I joke about it, even listening back to this stupid show when I'm editing it, and I'm like, oh my God, I fucking suck. Terrible. And meanwhile, everybody else is like, oh, it was a great show. It was really funny. I really, and I'm like, no, it was awful. I missed a joke here. I sounded stupid here. I stuttered here. Like I truly despise myself at times.
It's actually it's really crazy. This particular topic, I've talked about this for years. A smart person, a talented person, their best and worst qualities are often the same quality. I say that a lot, but I actually heard it beautifully expressed by somebody who most people don't know is actually quite a hell of a philosopher himself, the actor Jim Carrey, who I mentioned about a $10 million check last week. But he said something that really encapsulates what we're talking about. He said, if you want to create yourself to make it, you either have to make peace with who you are, or you have to kill who you really are and go to your grave clutching for something that you never were. So it's that unending desire to keep pushing forward and accomplishing more, but it'll never be enough because you can't quite achieve what you're going for because what you're going for is outside of yourself. So, Mark, I'm sure you have something to say about that.
No.
Not a word. You bastard. You bastard. I set you up.
No, well, you suck all the wind out of the cap, so then you want me to speak.
Oh, come on. We've gone for 4.5 hours before. You have plenty to say, my friend.
I think there's a lot of wisdom in that, and I think that people just in general, people aren't in touch with themselves. They don't develop their wisdom. People are so arrogant and entitled. They don't get out of their own way, and they're never going to achieve any level of enlightenment. I don't think it's going to happen. We live in a graceless age, and I just think, and it's not all doom and gloom. I don't think everybody's in it, but I think that the people that are of a good heart with good intentions are more in a minority than they've ever been before. And I think that part of the big danger is that we have more information than we've ever had, and we have less experience than we've ever had, and we have more communication, less people actually talking to each other and not at each other. And it's giving us the illusion, that we have things under control, that we have 600 friends and we're popular and blah, 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 or whatever. And no, that's why you have so many people harming themselves and feeling so disconnected and disillusioned from society. That's a big part of our work.
One thing I haven't been able to let go of since our last talk, Mark, was you had said something about just reflecting back on your 20 plus years in search and rescue. And you said that when you were a younger man, you would pull men from the river, both literally and figuratively. And as you've gotten older, something that has occurred to you, which didn't occur to you back at that time, was, why are they jumping in, or why are they going in? And there's a philosophical element to your work that you hadn't considered when you were young, but it seems to be on your mind these days.
It is because I realize that the problem's going to outlive me. It's going to outlive me. I know that, but and that isn't my wisdom. I stole that off of it was on a jar of Bob Evans or something, probably. I don't know. It's Nelson Mandela, I believe, actually said the quote, or Desmond Tutu. I think it was Desmond Tutu, and I think that I thought you would just keep doing it. You get older and you start to think, I got to start working smarter, not harder. And then it's like, do I want to just keep working these things, or do I want to find out what the problem is and at least have a grasp on why it's happening? And it's a confusing process. Just like even in my explanation of my understanding and appreciation of quote, I went between babbling idiot that knows nothing about something and then citing where the quote came from, so I'm jumping between places. So that's kind of my riff, the way I roll.
Greg said that you had said that when you were younger, it was, you weren't thinking the way you're thinking now. Do you think it was your job that made you really look at life the way you look at it now? Was there a case or a moment that you can remember where you started wondering, why are they jumping?
No, I don't think the job changed me in that way. I think it was with my family and stuff. I dealt with a lot of death early on in my life, and I think that molded me. And not being raised to be entitled, being having parents that were strict, and probably by today's standard would be called abusive, because they didn't hug me 20 hours a day, and I didn't get participation awards for not peeing on the seat.
Right.
Right. And I often regurgitate things my dad said, and which I don't think he stole it from Warren Zevon, but I heard it in Warren Zevon's song. But it was after my dad died, so he couldn't have stolen it from Warren Zevon unless it was from another song. But my dad used to always, I'm tired, say, rest when you're dead, and I always yelled at my guys, rest when you're dead, and keep moving, because I it's amazing to me that, and I'll pick on millennials because it's kind of my habit. It's a hobby. It's become a bit of a thing. They live in a tough world, and I'll give them that. But, oh, my God, it just I've never seen, and every generation is the new generation of slackers. And the last generation was last generation slackers. It's just, and everybody gets your time on the whipping post. But I've never seen a generation who put so much time into explaining why they can't do something instead of just doing it. Stop seeking every reason to stop forward motion and make some forward motion.
Right. Or act on it.
Right. If you told a millennial, I need you to handwrite a letter and get it mailed to somebody. Like, I've got to get a pen. I don't have any envelope. Where do I get stamps? Where do you put these letters? And I've got to mail. I don't know their address. It's in my phone. And they just go on about it. It's life is not. You're either here for a good time or a long time, and maybe you mix it a little. But too many people want to be rock stars too soon for doing nothing, and the world gives the illusion you can do that.
I got this picture of a younger millennial, because technically I'm a millennial, and I know how to send a letter. So I get this picture of a younger millennial writing out a letter in print, because they don't teach cursive anymore, which is fine. Writing the address out, having the stamp, and then shoving it between their MacBook Pro and slamming down the lid and expecting it to get to where it's going to go. And looking very confused as when they open it back up, the letter's still there.
Somebody's got to figure out these millennial scales for when people determine what generation they are. Because, Jeff, if you're a millennial, I'm not that far from being a millennial, and I don't think anybody knows who the hell's what. Who is in charge of these charts? I want to know.
It's an interesting discussion because the the millennial generation, because there are several different answers depending on who you ask, but the millennial generation is one of the most interesting, and every generation, I guess, has their fascinating moments. But it's interesting because if you are in the older millennial section, you were born and operated in life without the internet or cell phones or even pagers. At the same time, we were born at a time where we were young enough where that stuff still became a part of our life, ingrained in our life, and it's something that we can figure out and use it efficiently. Whereas Greg's generation, who's just a couple years older than me, is completely lost. It takes him 9 times to sign on to Skype.
And that's actually sadly true.
1981 to 1996, it says,
Right.
according to the Google.
I think that's bullshit. I was born at the end of 81, and I do not accept it. I just want to make that clear.
Well,
I'm with you.
It's crazy because, we've never seen a technology boom in the middle of a generation like we did with the millennials.
Right.
The technology was advancing forward. Yes, of course, there was major advances, but it wasn't as fast as it happened. At the middle part of this generation, the millennial generation, the internet hit and it just took off and started advancing at an incredible pace that we've never seen before.
But the problem is the internet has widened the gap there because it's made these artificial people that we lump into these millennial bad behaviors unfairly. But it's made it because I've seen people much older that have adapted these same horrible behaviors, and the technology, instead of being our servant, has become our master. It's adapted us to be the way it wants us to be. And you see kids walking around looking at their phones, and that's digital autism. They're staring down. They're not focused on anything around them. They're not in the moment. They're not present.
Yes, you are 100% correct. But it is fascinating too, because the generation after the millennials, you can see that they've started to adapt to the internet is not a big thing anymore. And then even the generation after them are even worse. Like, I joke about my son, he'll ask me these questions. He'll when we're trying to fill out FAFSA forms and get him get him ready for college. He's like, well, where do I go to fill out this form? And I'm like, you go here. And I didn't know the answer off the top of my head. That's not knowledge I just automatically have. I fucking Googled it. And then he asked me another question and then another question. I'm like, dude, use fucking Google like everybody else. And it's like almost like they don't even know it exists because they were born with it. And they're, but it's also fascinating because as a kid, I would do the same thing. And my parents would be like, open a fucking book.
Look it up. Yeah.
Look it up. Look it up in the dictionary.
Yeah.
Well, it could be in your child's defense. It could be because when he goes to fucking Google.com, I'm sure that comes up with something different.
Yes, he's very addicted to porn. It's my point.
Why is Mouth shaking his head so vigorously?
Mounds is also addicted to porn. Him and my son watch it together.
Whoa.
Don't worry, he's over 18.
Oh yeah, then definitely.
Yeah, that's right. Oh yeah.
Nothing illegal going on here.
I actually have a question for you. So with the millennial generation, it is not. It is not. So they say that phones and stuff are making younger kids depressed. Have you seen a correlation in like suicide deaths in the job that you do?
Absolutely. When I was growing up, if you wanted to invite somebody into your personal space, you had them up to your room, and on your walls you had posters, and that was your personal space, and it was judged by your few friends and maybe a couple of their friends, and that was it. And if you had a problem with somebody at school, summer came, you were through with that idiot. You didn't have to deal with him. You got a break. Now it never ends. It's always on. People are always putting you under a microscope. They're always comparing you. And instead of you being compared to the kids on your block, you're being compared against the kids all over the world, and it's a contest because everybody has got to be a rock star on Facebook. If Facebook were realistic and put down what happened, you know, there would be more stories about people shitting their pants on there or something. I don't know. but everybody is having the best day of their life on Facebook, except for me, who's wondering what the hell's going on.
Right.
Why are pictures of food so important?
That's a great question.
For the record, if you type fucking Google into your web browser, it just takes you to Google.
They even own that now too.
Did you try Googling fucking Google?
Yeah, I actually did. Yeah,
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
and that's what it takes you. It's like Google.com.
I want to ask you a couple of things in relation to search and rescue, and then I have a really important question that I've been dying to ask you since we set this interview up.
Okay.
So I'll ask my questions, and then I'll let anybody else finish up if they have questions relevant to search and rescue, and then we'll try and have a little bit of fun because this is something that you deal with every day. It's fascinating, but one of the things, and it's in relation to one question, but the first question I want to ask you: what makes you look at your team and say, guys, this is why we do this. This is why we come to work. Is there one thing that you can pinpoint?
But I can't, because it's a Zen thing. When that moment comes up, it's different for different people, and you just got to be there by their side to catch it and point it out to them. Like, this is your moment.
So you're saying that what might set off that feeling in you is different than maybe somebody else on your team.
Right. I mean, we can all be noble and say we're all there for the betterment of mankind and blah, 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 blah. We're all there for different reasons. And long as we're working towards the same goal, that's fine. But you got to be watching the person and know when their moment comes, when they have to have that epiphany where you know that now this vessel is ready to learn. Because a lot of people think they're ready to learn, and they're not. They're not. They're just ready to pretend they're ready to learn. It's just going to bounce off of them. They got to be ready to learn, and that takes a while. I mean, myself, it just happened like 2 years ago, so it takes a while.
The other question I have for you is, because this business can be such a weight on your shoulders. It's something that maybe haunts you at times. What do you guys do as a team, or even individually, but more so as a team? What do you guys do to let loose? Do you hang out outside of work? Do you go bowling? I can't imagine your team bowling, but that's just the first thing that came to mind. Or like, is there something that you guys do together just to get your mind off of a tough case?
We used to go up and do. We used to do like a camping. We used to do a couple camping things, and they were good. But then they stopped because there was far too much destruction. And we used to go out to eat more. And I kind of put a stop to it because what happened was I saw cliques developing. And that's not to say that if people want to be friends that I would stop them from being friends. But there's people that will join organizations, be in the workplace or whatever, that are there to I don't want people joining because they want friends. They got to join because you need to have friends. You're goddamn adults. Go meet a couple people that can stand your presence. And then come here and do something. If you make friends here, that's fine. That's fine. But it's not first and foremost. It's not right. It's like I tell people all the time. I got 4 friends in the world. I'm looking to get rid of one of them because he's a pain in my ass, but it's like the Supreme Court. I can't get rid of him according to the rules. You want him? I'll give him to you. That 500, 600 friend on Facebook, you think you got 600 friends? Try moving a sofa bed in the rain. See how many friends you have.
I wouldn't be one of them, that's for sure. And you just actually inspired me. Like, maybe I want to get rid of one of these friends tonight. Mount, Sterner, Leah.
No, not me. You like me.
Oh, with the 4 squares that I'm seeing, it's like this Hollywood Squares thing.
Which one would you pick? If you were me, Mark, which person would you pick to get rid of tonight?
Greg.
Oh, okay.
You son of a bitch.
He's already made two very, very detrimental mistakes.
Ooh.
I don't know if we're going to be able to air the episode with the amount of...
I would get rid of Greg. Here's why I would get rid of Greg. Greg is the single biggest threat to you there.
Yes, that's so
You
true.
got the beard, you got the. I mean, 2 drinks, you look like the same guy with a hat. You know. I mean, you got
And
the
also,
diversity.
he's just much smarter than me.
Right. And you've got to get rid of him. You got to kill